Hello friends, welcome again. My name is Manvendra and in this session we're going to learn about Docker files. So you guys must have heard about Docker files a lot because in general practice or in any production related environments we basically uses Docker files a lot, right? So it's not like we do not use the pre-built images from Docker Hub repository, but it is always a best practice to use your own Docker files so that you can keep everything inside that single Docker file with whatever things are required to run your applications into the Docker file. So what is Dockerfile? Dockerfile is nothing, it's just like a simple instructions, right? So as you know that in shell script we give line by line instructions, right? So Dockerfile is also the same. So in Dockerfile you write simple instructions or simple commands so that whatever the things required for your application to run or execute, you can conclude all of them into a single file, and then you can build this Docker file and then you can create your own image. That is the whole purpose of the Docker file, nothing else, right? So it is nothing, it is just a set of instructions. I will teach you what are the parameters or general things that we have in Docker file, and you can easily create any Docker file using any of the base image, right? So let's dive deeper about Docker files. So in Dockerfile, you know, there are generally three things that we mostly consider, right? So very first thing is in Dockerfile you will see from. So from is, I will teach you what is from and why we use it, right? And then second thing is run. You will mostly say these, and then third thing is command cmd. So what are these three things? So from is generally refer to an image or to a base image. Let's say you need to provide a simple base image at which you can build something, right? So using the from, you can say I want to use CentOS, right? You can say I want to use Ubuntu. You can say I want to use Nginx. Any of the predefined images in Docker's file and in Docker's Hub, we can use that base image here, because to build something we required at least a base image. So the same thing it is happening here, right? If you remember previously we had run docker run and then Ubuntu or docker pull, CentOS, Nginx, anything. So it is the same thing. So when you describe anything under this from section, it is going to pull that image from Docker Hub, right? So it should be a base image only. So let's say I'm just saying from CentOS. So there are no columns, it's just a simple space, and so these are the simple instructions. And then what run command will do is run command will build, so whatever the instructions you want to pass on. So once you have the base image, obviously you would develop or you will add some more task to that particular base image. That is what we call staging, right? So first you had a basic CentOS image, and after that you are adding one more layer on top of that. You are saying, okay, on the run section I just want the CentOS should be running with HTTP installed on it, right? So what you're going to do, you're simply going to give the since it's CentOS, so you're going to install anything using run repo, and then you're going with the simple instructions to install the HTTPD server or the web server. It is simply it is similar like the way you manually install HTTPD. So you simply put down the steps one by one, and then you can create this proper Docker file using it. And then comes the cmd. So what cmd does is, cmd is just like a command. So running a command once this proper Docker image has built the image, and after that the container has launched. So once the container has launched, it will execute that command. Simple, right? So basic difference between run and cmd is, so run will be doing the task at the build time of the image, but cmd will execute those commands after building it, right? So once you have your CentOS or any base operating system ready and the container has launched, then it will run that commands, right? So after this httpd has installed on your system, what we just require to start the this httpd service. So let's say service httpd and then start. Same thing you can do. If you permanently wants to enable it, then you can do service httpd enable. So what it will do is it will pull a basic image from CentOS, and then it is going to install httpd at the runtime, and then once your container is running, then it is going to execute this particular command, right? So whatever the things you provide here in command. Apart from these are the major three things you will find in any Docker file, but apart from that you will find many more things like entry point or working directory. I think that is work dir, and what else, and exposes for exposing the port, specific port. So we will see all of these things one by one, right? So this is basically a simple structure of a Docker file, right? So this is how we're going to write a Docker file. So now let's take an example. So the in previous lectures we have seen that we tried to install nginx manually, right? We tried to pull nginx image, and then we specified the ports to be open, and then we exposed those ports or the container ports to our local system ports, right? All of the things we did manually. So using Dockerfile, what we can do is we can combine all of these steps into a single Docker file, and then we can build an image using this Dockerfile, and then we can create a container using it, right? So very first thing is you're going to write a Docker file, right? And after that we're going to build an image using this Docker file, and then what you're going to do is we're going to run a container. So this is a simple hierarchy, or this is a simple process to deal with the Docker's files, or this is why we use Docker's file, right? So Dockerfile is being used to build an image, and then further we can create a container using it. So let's go ahead quickly and see whatever the steps we did in previous lectures. We pulled in the nginx image, and then we expose some port. So same thing we're going to do using Dockerfile, right? So I'm going to use the same from, and then let's say I'm giving Ubuntu, and here you can give some tags. It is not required. If you do not want to give this latest, it will automatically pick the latest one. And then what I'm saying is I'm giving run, and so Ubuntu would be pulled up as an fresh basic image. Then we would be requiring apt-y and then update, and I think then we will be requiring upgrade as well. apt-y upgrade. This is how it will upgrade all of its repositories, right? And after that what we can do is we can give again the same thing, run, and then apt-y install nginx. Now what it will do is it will install nginx on the base image of Ubuntu. Now what we need to do is we need to give expose, and what it will do is it will expose containers internal port 80, right? And then we can map this port to our local port at the time of running the container. And after that what we can say, using the command, I can give service nginx start. So what it will do is it will start that nginx service, right? And same thing we need to do. So okay, that is all. I think this is how we are pulling just Ubuntu image, and then it is updating it, and then it is exposing the port, and then command it is starting this nginx service. Okay, so let's go to terminal and see the same thing. So I already have this Dockerfile ready for this Nginx. So let me show you what it contains. So it has the same thing. It is from Ubuntu, it is pulling up, and then it is installing Nginx, run apt update, and then installing Nginx, and then it is exposing port 80. And this command here, you can see, is what it is doing is it is this command is being used to run Nginx in the foreground. Foreground, it means in the background. So if we will not give this line, then your Nginx container will immediately die, right? Because it will not be keep on running in the backend. So that is why this particular line is being used here. So now what we need to do is, so let me clear this first. Now we have this Dockerfile here in this path, right? And then what we need to do is we need to build this. So building this Docker file, so we have simple command. So it is docker build, and then you need to give -- tag or anything you can say. Let's say sample Ubuntu. This is the tag that I'm giving, and you need to provide the location of your Docker files path, right? So here I'm giving dot means I already have this Docker file here. You can see that I have this Docker file, so I'm giving this dot here. And once I do that, what it is going, it is just pulling that Ubuntu image, and then it is going to install all of these things that we have defined in Dockerfile. So let it complete first. So now the Docker image has been built successfully. So one more thing, that whenever you're pulling any base image and on top of that you are doing staging to your Docker file, staging is simply means the steps that you are adding on top of your base image. So it may vary, and it can take several minutes to build the Docker image, right? So this is now successful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I have this Docker image ready. So I do Docker images. So this is the same name that we have given at the time of build, Docker sample Ubuntu, and then it is the size, right? It was built 36 seconds ago only. So now we have our custom image. So guys, in production environment, this is what we generally do, right? We write our own Docker file, and then we build it using CI/CD Jenkins part or any specific build tools, right? So once this image is built, and then in the production environment we push this image to any centralized repository system, let's say in Bitbucket or in GitLab or in GitHub or in ECR, anywhere, right? And then our code generally pulls this image and then try to deploy it using the deployment or EKS or anywhere. So this is a simple hierarchy, right? So now you are platform independent. Now you can push this image anywhere, and you can deploy this image anywhere, right? So this is now let's try to run a container using the same image. So we're going to use the same command, docker run, and then -d to run this in a foreground. Then this is the name of the image that we are giving, right? And maybe we just want to expose some ports as well. So let's say 6061 this time, and we are, so port 80 was already exposed in our Docker file, right? So we are going to map this port 80 to localhost port 6061. So now same thing will happen, and hit enter. Now if we see this docker ps, now we have this sample Ubuntu running, and we can see that the port 6061 is redirecting to containers port 80, right? Now it should be running. So we do not need to do anything. So if you remember last time, we just pulled fresh Nginx image, and then we did a lot of things, and we then exposed it, and then we tried to access it on our browser using the same port. So now you have combined all of the steps in Dockerfile, and you just built the image, and using that image you are just running a container. So let's go to the browser and let's see if this is running or not. So I'm giving localhost. So yesterday it was running on port 6060. This time we give 6061, and yes, we have this nginx page running right now. So same thing we can do, right? Here we can do the same thing, and in Dockerfile, if you see the Dockerfile here, you can pass on that default nginx page as well, so that your this particular nginx page will not appear. So I hope this helped you a lot to understand about the Dockerfile's basic structure, and as soon as you start working in production environments or in real-time scenarios, these Docker files will be huge. I mean, not very huge, but it would get lengthier according to their specific needs. Let's say if you're running some Node.js application or Python application, then you would have some basic instructions written under run expose or cmd, or so you will find all of those options there as well, along with their specific task or commands that would be required to keep their applications up and running. Alright guys, so I'll meet you in the next lecture with some more advanced things and concepts about Docker files, and we will write more Docker files, and we will see if we would have multiple Docker files at the same location, then how we can pass it. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching.